What's up again, everybody? It's Carpo here, obviously. Thought I'd make a video and just try to go over a few ideas about being, I don't know, the things I've discovered in my life that I'd like to share with other people, which is pretty much what this channel is. But I'd like to start off by saying thank you to all of you. Thank you to all my subscribers who watch this, and I always feel cheesy saying that, but I know I have a lot of younger people who watch the channel, and some people that are much older than me who watch the channel, and a lot of people my age, and I'm not an ageist. In other words, there are just different types of people out there, and it's really hard to find people who you can resonate with. To me, I've found that age groups don't matter much. And that's why I go to Soak, which is, as I've mentioned before, the regional burn out here. Burning Man, Oregon. I always have to define that. Every state has their own Burning Man, if you will. And right now it's about almost 8 o'clock p.m. And in about an hour and a half they're going to burn the temple at Soak. And I've been there pretty much every year for the last 9 years. And I couldn't get a ticket in time this time. And I'm sitting here kind of stewing in my frustration about not being able to go. And I started thinking a lot about this. Why does it bother me so much that I can't be at this one event? Because in 2 weeks, I'm going to the Grateful Dead, or the Dead and Company, with my wife and our friends, and taking the bus up there, and it's going to be a blast. It's going to be a great few days. But Soak to me is something different, because it's not just a time to party, it's a time to regain my thoughts. And I have realized over the years that so many people that I meet there can be arrogant, pretentious, even rude, but I'm so much like them in a way. And I don't mean in those definitions, but that arrogance and rudeness come as a side effect of certain realizations in life. And I don't mean just rude to people in general. I mean there's a kindness, but an intolerance to bullshit. And that's kind of what I wanted to cover here, was the whole, there's a kind of a community of spiritual people, and that's the only way I can define it. It's this kind of buying into this idea that they've kind of let go of, I don't even know how to define it. I was one of those people, which is why I wanted to talk about this. I was the guy who, and I still wear tie-dyes, I still have long hair, I've still got the hippie attitude, and I'm, have this kind of let it go, relax type attitude, but I don't let that define who I am. In other words, when somebody pisses me off, I let them know. I don't say, well, my chakras aren't aligned because I'm not feeling a certain way. And when I say these things, I feel like I'm almost insulting people. When I start talking about these spiritual ideas, then I feel like I'm kind of tearing other people's image down of reality. But I also know in my heart that people who believe things are going to believe them regardless of what I say and what others say. And also there's kind of an obligation within me to call out bullshit where I see it. Okay? I uploaded a video earlier about, it was some old vintage FDA video about medical quack devices, quackery. And they were showing these particular devices that are supposed to cure cancer and do everything else. And it's nothing different than today. The same old bullshit being sold. Except for whenever I make a video talking about, hey, this product is bullshit or this is bullshit, I feel like I'm the guy who's like ruining the fun in a way. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, if placebo is as strong as we believe it is, then who am I to just tell people they shouldn't believe in something? So, it's like what we see is what we know. The experiences we have kind of define what we believe in and what we think is important and true. And I think our arrogance is in thinking that we can change the path of humanity. So I'd like to kind of go into that for a minute. The arrogance is thinking that we can fix the world. So let me start with a simple example. Global warming, if you want to call it that. Or you could call it climate change. Now, I've looked at the studies as much as I understand. I've looked at the scientific consensus that, yes, the climate is changing. But hearing so much resistance from the other side, and I'm not just talking about the few scientists who, work for the oil companies who say, oh no, everything's just fine. Even the oil companies themselves have said, oh yeah, we will gradually warm the climate and contribute to climate change. But the minute you say that, you trigger a bunch of emotions and thoughts. Some people who are like, we've got to stop climate change. And then there's a bunch of people who say, that's just bullshit. It's just a way for people to get carbon tax money out of you. I had to look at both sides because I was the person who thought, well, maybe if we do recycle and drive less, it might help. But looking at the numbers now, I've just realized it's a drop in the bucket compared to all of the pollution and the natural process of the earth. But more than this, and I'm not even going to get into the global warming issue, I'm using it as a segue into defining the idea that we as humans are really arrogant to think that we can change anything on this planet. It's a desperate attempt to corral the world the way that we've corralled animals. We've desperately pulled in livestock and harvested grain and learned how to manipulate and change genetics in the plants that we consume and the animals as well. And we think that we're these, we've mastered this planet. And then we decided to double our population within a frickin' snap of the fingers. No shit. From the time I was born. And here we are. We're going to suffer catastrophic demise of humankind. And a lot of people want to just kind of dance around and pretend like that's not true, that we're going to pull out of it, that we're going to find some utopia. So what I'm trying to say is not that, oh, well, we should be doom and gloom. And I'm also not saying, oh, we should try to change every little thing because stopping eating meat is going to save the world. What I am saying is that we have to find a happy medium somewhere where we're not damaging our local environment, where we're using common fucking sense. You know what I mean? Don't dump your oil down the drain. But, if you really think that not using a plastic straw is going to save the planet, so be it. But we have to live now. And we are an oil-dependent society. So here we are stuck in the middle, is what I'm saying. And I'm not... Definitely, this has nothing to do with oil itself. I'm just using that as an example. Sure, we could get off of fossil fuels, but then you ask the other side, well, what's the alternative? Oh, we could use solar. Okay, well, solar panels pollute the planet too. The mining of the elements, the transportation, the manufacturing. We can use wind. The magnets that are used, these neodymium magnets, high-powered or rare earth magnets, are mined out of... They're used in these windmills, are mined out of mines that have a waste, and this waste is radioactive, and it sits in open pits in China, and so you can't win. People will use the ammunition to fight against either side, whether it be clean energy or dirty energy. And this, really, I spent too much time on that because this has nothing to do with that. What it has to do with is just saying, we don't know. Nobody knows if we're heading into an ultra-hot planet or a fucking ice age where we're all just going to freeze to death. I'm under the impression from my research that it's going to be both. That the climate will warm, it will melt the ice caps, which will dilute the oceans and slow the current that comes up along Florida. And then it will and change the air currents and the jet stream, and we'll have new deserts in places we never did. And we'll have to adjust, adapt, and move, and some people will live and some people will die. Big fucking deal, right? Well, that's the world. That's the world we live in, and we have to look at that reality and the possibility that it's not about trying to preserve the small things. It's not about saving pandas. It's about observing what's happening and using that to say, wait a minute, we need to clean up our act as individuals. So it's not an excuse to just pollute the planet and say we don't give a shit. It's not an excuse to say, oh well, we're already screwed, we might as well destroy everything. But the way we're going about it isn't necessarily the right way. And so, let me give you another example, nuclear energy. I'm one of the very few proponents of nuclear power that I know of. And I know, plenty of people will tell me about the dangers and the possible damage nuclear facilities could do and the meltdowns of the past. All I can say is evolution, progress, moving forward. Just because we built some failed nuclear power plants a mere few decades after we invented them doesn't mean that today we can't create some amazing reactors that would actually be able to benefit us as humans and get us out of this, issue we're in. To me, nuclear power, the nuclear furnace, the nuclear idea in itself is just absolutely amazing and mind-blowing and one of the most useful things that we've created, but at the same time the most damaging if it's not used properly. Nuclear power is not the answer to everything, and I don't want people to think that's what I'm saying. But nuclear power is definitely one of the ways that we can get ourselves out of at least some of the energy crisis that we're in. Some places have a lot more wind. Some places have a lot more sun. Some places have neither, and nuclear power is the best option. And hell, in some places geothermal energy is great. And, it's like we're trying to impress our ideas of what the world should be upon the world. I don't know how else to define it. It's a crazy world to live in. Honestly, I don't really feel like talking much tonight. I don't even know why I started this video, and I might even delete it, but I feel like it's kind of a waste if I don't, but at the same time, just talking to the camera is it helps me. Then I feel like I'm not just unloading on some random human. It's somebody who actually wants to listen, but I feel like my voice, my thoughts, my ideas are just, I feel cheesy as a human, if that makes sense. It's like, they call it imposter syndrome. It's interesting as a YouTuber, when I was first vocalizing my thoughts years ago, I had no problem saying anything that came to mind and really didn't give a shit much or think much of it because maybe a dozen people watched my channel. And then it grew to 100, then it grew to 1,000, and now in the next few months it's going to hit 20,000. I don't know what to do for that, but celebrate somehow. But I never expected that to ever happen. And I thought, well, shit, it's not that many people watch my channel, but even if a few hundred people are watching my channel, I close my eyes and picture a church full of people, 300 people, and me at the podium thinking, well, if I'm speaking to all these people, I better have something to say, not just be rambling on about something random. But there are people who like hearing people just ramble. There's others who like people talking about their lives, and others that don't want to hear about your life and just want to hear about science. Others that want to hear about kratom. Others that want to hear about cannabis and technology and all these things. And my whole channel has become a clusterfuck of random things that I just talk about all the time. And it's always different. You never know what to expect. And for me, that's great because there's no obligations. But now I'm sitting here thinking, well, how can I do something great with my channel, and be heard by more people? And the minute I say that to myself, I think, oh, you're an arrogant prick. What the fuck do you think? You think that people need to watch you? What does it matter? Why do you care if people watch you? And there's the cognitive dissonance, ambivalence about how to progress as a human. Trying to be humble, but also trying to succeed and feed my family and live, people are like, well, why don't you put ads on your channel? I'm like, well, it doesn't resonate with me and my beliefs about the world. I don't want to have a bunch of ads that I might not agree with. And people who understand will be like, but it doesn't matter, man. If you can make a few bucks off of the companies, might as well do it. And that's where I'm stuck, kind of in that realm of, it's not a matter of selling out, just a matter of like, I don't want to partake in society's bullshit, but I have to. Just by using YouTube, I have to. I'm on Google's platform. I'm using my camera to upload videos onto YouTube. My telephone, which, you give permissions to different apps, and Google knows everything that you look for. It's basically like we've given our lives up to the internet. So for me, making videos and telling everything about my life, probably reveals less about me than my search history habits do, or you know, as far as the analysis of my thoughts, because they're so random. I'm not into one thing. It's hard to market to people like me who don't buy anything in particular. But I'm sure the algorithms will figure that shit out in no time. So anyhow, I'm not sure exactly what I wanted to talk about here. A few different things that I'd pretty much already covered, that life's full of overwhelming bullshit and that we have to make the best of it, but we don't have to pretend like we're positive all the time. That this idea through history of demons, and now it's misaligned chakras and all these symbols we put upon things don't really mean anything, and that I've kind of given up on all these spiritual practices as ideas, or, you know, they're great metaphors for people. I consider it like beginners reality, using that kind of spiritual practice, and that's not an offensive thing. In other words, we need metaphors and symbols in our lives. It helps us to cope. But hopefully we get to a point where we don't have to anymore. They call it spiritual bypassing. There's a term for it. And it's when people use these, you know, this kind of pious spirituality as kind of an excuse for them to hide their feelings, or people who become overly positive or overly, you know, excitable all the time and never negative, never talk about anything bad. I've been there because I was trying that on for size, and just like everyone else, I was just hiding my negativity because I don't want to be an asshole. But I realized that you have to not be an asshole, but be honest about how you feel on the negative realm. But I don't believe in a lot of the things that I once thought may be plausible. I wouldn't say I've ever really had any beliefs, but I just realized it's okay to be a fool. It's okay to be who you be and be yourself. Even though I've always known that in my heart, it's really hard to follow that and just say fuck it all, because you also, especially when you have kids, you have to feed your family. If you're single, it's totally different. I guess I can't say that because I'm not single, but that you're not obligated to anyone. You could wander off and do anything at any time. But when you have people who you're accountable for, not even kids, but just family, friends, mothers, fathers, children, whoever it may be, it makes it harder for you to just kind of go your own path, because you want to wander off into your own realm and in your own bubble, as they call it, but you also have to be present for those around you. So you just do what you do. That's all you can do. It's okay. Embrace the bullshit. Embrace who you are. Embrace your illusions, your delusions, but be aware of them and let shit go. When you get to the point where you can make a 20-minute video rambling on YouTube about basically nothing like I can, you've succeeded. What else can I say, I just keep looking out there and it's almost dark. And I keep thinking, if I was at Soak right now, I'd probably have eaten about 5 grams of mushrooms, and I'd be laying on the field in complete ecstasy, waiting for the fire to begin. And not to bring that up, psychedelics, I don't like to throw them around lightly. Psychedelics to me aren't something I take to get high. It's very hard to explain that to people. If you think psychedelics are something people just take to party out, you're probably correct in many cases. But for me, I take them maybe every couple of years. And I've been hanging on to these ones forever. I ended up throwing some away because they got so old. It's like I'm not interested in taking them all the time. To me, it's a spiritual practice. And there I am, throwing that spiritual word into there. But it is. If there's such a thing as spirit, mushrooms bring me to that point where I can see the world around me in clarity and understand it in a way that I can't understand in ordinary life. And so I'd like to do a video about psychedelics here. But as much as I think about psychedelics and I'm fascinated and research them, I don't really talk about them at all. And it's probably because I'm cautious. Like, I've always watched the channel like Psyched Substance. He's been doing videos about psychedelics for years. But I knew what was going to happen. He got to the point where he has kids, he has a family, and he didn't want to sacrifice that and risk it to just talk about drugs all the time. And so he spoke about some of the issues he had, but it's not just that. You lose interest in it. Even if you stand up and say, well, I don't give a shit what the law says or what the man says about psychedelics, at a point you realize they're nothing more than a stepping stone. In other words, talking about psychedelics all the time is kind of like talking about one book all the time. You read the book, it's amazing for you. For months afterwards, you think this book was great, it really helped me. Maybe even weeks, but it can go on for months. And then eventually you say, okay, that book is boring, I'm moving on. And that's how psychedelics are. It's a catalyst for deeper learning. So my early psychedelic experiences with LSD and psilocybin helped me to open my eyes to that there was something greater, but didn't force me to take that route to get to something greater. Today, the main reason I take them is as an antidepressant. And you can, this is well known. I mean, there have been several different short documentaries done about people who take things for either migraines or depression or anxiety. And let's say every 3 to 6 months, somebody will sit down and take them in a proper setting. Usually it's 3 to 5 grams, will do the trick. Even less for some people. Some people take more. For me, about 5 grams is a good high-end trip, and 3 grams is good for just kind of, awareness. I took 1.5 grams at a motel I went to recently for my anniversary this month. And they were old, so, and it wasn't that much. So I didn't really feel much, but it was still enough to get that reminder that they have an antidepressant effect. So before I go, I should definitely talk about this because somebody's going to ask. Since I brought up psychedelics, somebody's going to ask about microdosing and what I think about that. Microdosing is a relatively new thing. When I was younger, we still had all the, myths and legends around LSD about how it's loaded with strychnine or, mushrooms are this and they're actually a poison. The things we didn't understand as kids. We read every book we could find, but there was no internet. And then Erowid came around and the internet and a variety of other informative books and sites. Learned about Terence McKenna and some of these other, great teachers of psychedelic literature as well as growing techniques like Paul Stamets. And I learned that things weren't actually all, the way I thought. But when it comes to microdosing, it popped up out of the blue and people decided, well, I'm just going to take small amounts of psychedelics because they think, well, if a large dose does this for me, maybe taking a small amount over a period of time each day will have a better effect. Let me just say this. For some people, this may be possible. It may be very beneficial. There's 2 things I'd like to talk about. One is placebo. If you don't know what placebo is, then, I'm not going to go into detail on it. But whenever we're taking something new, we have to be aware of the possibility we may be creating that reality. And number 2, taking a psychedelic to me is, I hate to say it this way, it's a ceremonial thing. I take it because the larger effect shuts down your frontal cortex, it stops your brain from thinking its rational thoughts, and allows parts to communicate that don't ordinarily communicate. Now, this has been scientifically proven. So your brain starts connecting ideas and thoughts that you ordinarily can't access. It's the only way I can define it. If you're taking small amounts all the time, you don't get that full effect when you take a larger dose. Your brain will become immune. Serotonin is very similar to psilocybin and LSD in the chemical makeup. It's a key to a lock. Psilocybin fits that lock a little differently. But we don't know exactly how that works. And my thought is if you take it long enough, your brain will build up a resistance. Just like if you're taking an SSRI, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or an SSI, or whatever the hell. There's SRIs. There's all kinds of different pills and different drugs who deal with dopamine and serotonin, acetylcholine. We don't know how all these things work. We really don't. There are so many people who will post, big long comments about, or discussions or scientific articles or quotes about, oh, this is how this works with this, and then the next year some other article comes out and says, wait a minute, dopamine's not what we thought it was. So anyhow, when it comes to psychedelics, they're very unique in that way, because they don't just stimulate your own natural serotonin or dopamine. They fit the key, a different key in the lock that shouldn't fit there, but it does fit there. So it's an experience that kind of puts us in a place where we can see the world in a different lens. So now that I've been talking about it for a while, I'm probably going to take some mushrooms soon. Sounds fun. Anyhow, I'll talk to you all later. This is just kind of a ramble for Saturday night at a time when I should be somewhere else. But I thought this might help to ease my pain, but it hasn't. So I'm going to go. I'll talk to y'all later. Be well. Have a good night, my friends. And, yeah. Remember, take her easy.